Hello everybody, welcome to Little Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video. Uh, just got 20K, so I have to bump up the number. Thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed, but now we are trying to reach 25,000 subscribers, so your subscription would be much appreciated. Maybe I'll just say 30. I'm hoping we can get to 30 before the playoffs are over. But with that said, this video is about Knicks versus Pistons Game 2, and I did not end up releasing my breakdown for Game 1 before this one, even though I anticipated it. What I'm going to do is go ahead and record that as I wrote it, regardless of the context of Game 2, just so you can still capture the feeling of what I had. But just to give you a very brief idea, I felt really good about Knicks Pistons Game 1 for a majority of it, and then of course the Knicks went on a 21-0 run in the fourth quarter that completely blew the game wide open. Regardless of if they won it or not, this game was a very big one for the Pistons, because if they lost Game 2 in a very bad fashion, then that was probably going to be the series, and I was afraid we were going to get exactly that in the fourth quarter as the Knicks brought it very close. It feels like in the playoffs thus far, there hasn't been a lead that has been really safe at all, or at least between teams that are actually competitive, because obviously the OKC versus Memphis lead was safe. But after the Knicks had a fucking horrible shooting third quarter, they picked it up in the fourth, and a lot of it was Jalen Brunson doing the heavy lifting. A lot of discourse is going to be had about Jalen after this game, because he was definitely foul grifting like a motherfucker. Now, if you know me, you know that foul baiting is not something that I think is as nearly big of a problem as a lot of people seem to think. But with Brunson in this game, it was every fucking possession. And overall, with the officiating in this one, it was weird, because in the first half, the free throws were all going to Detroit. In fact, I believe they shot 14 and the Pistons shot 0 of them in the first half. But after that, the free throws started to go towards New York considerably more. In the second half, I think it was, I don't know, it was more like 20-20. Definitely a lot more free throws in the second half in general. The pace slowed down. Every single actual field goal felt fucking massive because of this, especially for the Knicks, every field goal that was not made by Jalen Brunson, because Jalen had his moments where he was just pretty unstoppable. So that was going to be what it was. But Josh Hart, 2 for 6, OG, 4 for 10, and Cat with only 10 points in this one. I'm a little surprised he played as few minutes as he did, and I'm surprised he didn't score that much. He also didn't rebound all that well. He played good defense in the time that he actually was out there, so that's good. That has maintained his defense in game one. To me, was the key factor in them winning that game. But the big reason why Detroit was so much better in this one, the reason they felt more comfortable, is because Cade Cunningham finally got some space. Now, I could not quite put my finger on how much of that was scheme versus the Knicks just allowing it, because of course between Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, and Tobias Harris, they all combined for like 60, 70-ish points between the three of them. I think Tobias had near 30, and I know Hardaway had 19, Beasley had like 21. So yeah, that math checks out roughly. Beasley 2 for 9, Hardaway 0 for 8. Tobias was 6 for 11 for 15 points, but not nearly as devastating as he was in game one. So I think they were taking more of the mindset of, we're going to shut down everybody else and we're going to throw more single coverage at Cade and just trust our defenders to do a good enough job at that. You can see a major disparity in the assists in this one for him, because he only had 3 in this game, paired with 5 turnovers, where I don't remember what he finished game one with, but I know he had 9 at like the halfway point of the third quarter. So much more of the Cade show in this one, and he took full advantage of the single coverage. Like, whether it be McHale or OG, they're both great defenders. Sometimes it was Josh Hart at points. Like, those are good matchups for Cade Cunningham, but he's just too good of a player for single coverage. And this was the take that I caught a lot of heat for in my Knicks Pistons preview. And let me extend an olive branch to the Knicks fans, and I will do this in the preview as well. I should not have said what I said about Cade being more of a gamer than Jalen Brunson. What's extra weird about that is gamer is not a fucking term that I use. It's just, I just used it in the moment. It was more of a gut feeling, and the trouble with this job is sometimes you have a gut feeling and you say it without it being something that's actually substantiated. I try to keep my opinions that are completely unsubstantiated entirely to myself, but sometimes they slip. But that said, Cade and Brunson are, I think, very similar in terms of ability. It's very close. If you think Cade's better, I understand that. If you think Brunson is better, I completely understand that. But Cade proved in this game, after a very bad game one, that if you're going to give him single coverage, he's a fucking dog. My number one concern for Detroit in this one was that Cade would be pretty easy to bother defensively because he's A, you're going to have a bunch of big wings on him, but also B, you can put a shitload of attention on him. Brunson has been good in both games, but if he had a bad game, Karl Anthony Towns could step up, OG could step up, McHale could step up. There's enough guys who are actually reliable enough at scoring the ball where Tobias, Malik, and Hardaway are not going to average 60 combined throughout this series. So the big L of game one was I was like, wow, you dropped the ball with those guys going off, but they went off because of the coverage Cade Cunningham had, because they had so many completely free looks. So to me, I'm curious to see how they will approach covering Cade throughout the rest of the series, because the single coverage approach here didn't really work. The doubles all the time worked in game one, but I think their offensive boost in the fourth was more of the reason than the defense, because those other guys were going off. But I think you can more likely tell yourself that Tobias, Malik, and Hardaway won't do that again with the coverage of game one than you could tell yourself that Cade won't do that again with the coverage of game two. So I would lean more towards just trying to do everything in your power to stop Cade Cunningham, because I think the Pistons are a snake, and if you cut the head off of it, that's a GG. So I don't think that was a good switch up, and it definitely reached a point where that was just outright the intention. It wasn't just a couple of possessions. The other thing that Detroit did, I really felt like they should have run more pick and roll in the first game, because it went really well every time that it happened. And something that they did in a handful of possessions here with Cade is they had him run to the ball in a handoff into a screen, which that was another thing I said, or I wrote down. I didn't say it. I wrote this down from game one. But they need to do more action where he doesn't have the ball and he is coming to the ball and then attacking off of it. And they had multiple instances where he ran to the ball into the screen and then had a burst going to the basket, and that either resulted in a drive for a layup or free throws. Speaking of, Cade had probably the best whistle that I have seen from him in any game ever. It's actually weird how many favorable calls that he had going this way. Officiating will be a large subject of this one, but frankly, it was just kind of stupid and bad most of the game on both sides of it. There were only a couple of super egregious ones, but there were a lot of calls that were just like, you really didn't need to call that. Like, I thought this was the playoffs and we're biting our whistle here, but that's not exactly the approach that these refs took. It's annoying, but I think this was a game that, while poorly officiated, didn't flip the result. I think it would have gone similarly regardless, but not similarly, but I still think the Pistons would have won. But not only did Detroit respond well to game one, they won game two in New York. And I gotta say this, I have to be petty about this. A lot of Knicks fans thought it was insane that I picked the Pistons to win this series. They thought it was outright disrespectful to the Detroit Pistons, to the New York Knicks, rather. And what I say to you is, just because I pick one team to win over the other does not mean I don't respect the other. I could just as easily turn this around and say that you just simply did not respect the Detroit Pistons, and that's why you underestimated them. That's why you were so sure that they were going to dominate this series. But I'll tell you now, the Detroit Pistons are a good enough team to beat the New York Knicks. The Knicks are a better, more talented, more well-rounded team as a whole, but I thought just from a matchup perspective, Detroit had the favorable matchup, and they were also running high off of the end of the season. Like, they had a lot of momentum. And the other thing, the reason I said that Cade would be more of a gamer in this series than Brunson is just simply height. The height difference is literally it. Because Brunson is being guarded by the 6'8" Asar Thompson, and that is a 8-inch, 7-inch height difference. And Cade Cunningham is getting guarded by 6'8", 6'7", 6'6"-ish, whatever they are, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. That's not a height disadvantage. They're around the same size. So I just thought that Brunson would have more trouble getting his shot off, and that has been a little bit true, but the free throw disparity made up for it, and his mid-range jumper and his three off the dribble are both money. As I said at the end of my prediction, which always goes completely unheard because, I don't know, people are obnoxious, I said this will be a close series regardless. I still feel that way. I'm not about to come out here and just be like, ha ha, look at you guys, because guess what? A bunch of you dumbass fucking Knicks fans did that after game one, and now you probably feel a little silly about it. It's dumb to say like bold statements about the series at large after one game. Series are not decided in game one, I hate to tell you. So save your celebration, save the I told you so for after the series. And guess what? If you did tell me so, I will acknowledge it because I'm not like unwilling to admit when I'm wrong. It's perfectly fine. You can't make this many opinions on the internet. You can't talk online constantly and not say stuff that ends up being wrong all the time. This job is professionally being incorrect all the time because you're predicting shit that can't be predicted. So that's enough of that. I'm glad the Pistons won. I'm rooting for them because my friend Nick is a Pistons fan, and I want to see him have some joy because he did not get that from the Detroit Lions. Hey, buddy, what's up?
I can't emphasize to you, man, like I've been crying for like 20 minutes, and I just taped like a 10-minute video. I can't believe what this feels like. I've waited seemingly my entire goddamn life for this team to do exactly what they just did. I was 5 years old when they won the championship in 2004, about to turn 6 years old. It's a blind spot for me. I remember when they won I remember when they lost in 2005 more than I remember when they won in 2004. You spend a few years at the end of the 2010s being good. The Pistons were good. They made, 6 straight Eastern Conference Finals, and there was sort of like an expectation that this is what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be this good team. And then suddenly, I'm a fucking 9-year-old, and Chauncey Billups gets traded for Allen Iverson. And as a 9-year-old, I'm like, who the fuck is Allen Iverson? I don't know who this is. I don't care about that. You traded Chauncey Billups, Joe Dumars, you fuck. I swore off the Pistons. I said I'm never going to watch them again. And then suddenly they just kind of, over the years, I just kind of decided to fall back in love with them, and it just kind of fucking happened. Stanley Johnson ends up on the team. We go up against the Cavs in 2016. Food. You knew they weren't going to win a single series. That team goes on to win the NBA Finals, and it's a franchise that is destitute and dying. And then 2018, 2019, Blake Griffin plays the best season that he's ever played his entire NBA career. But you're playing Milwaukee. Blake Griffin misses the first 2 games of the series. And you're lucky if you manage to win game 4 or game 3 or game 4. They didn't do it. They get swept. You were fucking food for both of those series. I've been sitting here bawling my goddamn on one playoff game. They won one playoff game. It's just to tie the series to go back to Detroit 1-1. I can't believe that this is real. I have sat through some of the darkest shit of my entire fucking life as a sports fan, as a Detroit sports fan, rooting for the Tigers, the Lions, the fucking Red Wings, and the Pistons. We've had the worst decade that anybody has ever had, and they're all up at the exact same time. And for the Pistons to go into Madison Square Garden with no Isaiah Stewart and to hold the Knicks to, after 3 quarters, 67 points? Ball the motherfucking line. Get the fuck off. I can't believe that this is real. the validation that I feel right now that Cade Cunningham is actually that guy. I can't believe that this is my fucking life. I don't care how the next, if they go out in 5 games, right? The next 3 games, the Knicks win by 100. I don't fucking care. This moment will never be stripped from me. That I knew that we were right. I knew that this team could do it. Everybody told us that we were fucking idiots, that we couldn't beat the Knicks. Well, we just fucking did. And if you want to be for real about this, there's a world where the Pistons are up 2-0 in this series. But if ifs were fifths, we'd all be drunk right now. They're not. It's 1-1 going back to Detroit. Brother, I cannot describe to you the weight that I feel, the validation that I feel, that this is fucking real, that they fucking did it. They went into New York and they're going back to Detroit and the series is tied 1-1. I can't believe that this is my life. I don't care how the rest of the series goes. Of course I care how the rest of the series goes, but I don't fucking care how the rest of the series goes because this is everything that I wanted it to be. This is the game that I wanted it to be. This is the best case scenario that America, the world watched Cade Cunningham do what he motherfucking did in that game. I can't believe that this is my life. I've been wiping tears. Dog, the last time they won a playoff game, George W. Bush was the fucking president. I was 9 years old. My son is about to turn 1 this week. And the Pistons finally did it again. That perspective, I'm almost 27 years old. That's the perspective that I cannot get out of my head. That the last time that the Pistons won a playoff game, not a series, a game, I was in 5th fucking grade. I'm a grown-ass man with a child and a family. I'm living in an entirely different state, an entirely different city at this point, and they finally did it. The Pistons won a playoff game. I'm not going to stop crying for years because of this. They fucking did it, Jacob. They did it. The Pistons are tied with the New York Knicks, the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, 1-1, headed back to Detroit.
Wow. Everybody better be fucking applauding at home. I was expecting about a minute there, but you had a whole monologue. That was impressive.
Is that too long?
No, dude. No, that's all good. This is what we do.
Folks, here at, is this Little Rusty Buckets?
Yep, little. It's little.
Here at Little Rusty Buckets, we like to cover all the biggest stories, and we like to cover them from all angles, and it's impossible not to cover this Detroit Pistons singular playoffs. They didn't win the fucking series, by the way. They just won a single game. It's impossible to cover this story without covering it from the obvious angle, which is that the last time they won, Motown Noah was 9 years old, and he is now a almost 27-year-old man with a child, and they finally did it again. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to the video.
This is the outro, but bye.